Story 1. What remains after the flood? Year 2379. The seas had devoured the world. City by city, coastline by coastline, the waters rose without pause. A creeping cataclysm no wall could hold back, no engine could outrun. Flooded continents became ghostly reefs beneath miles of dark ocean. Nations collapsed, borders dissolved into brine. The sky turned silver and stormless, as if even the atmosphere had grown tired. But not everyone was lost. Far above the waves, piercing the clouds like a needle into heaven, stood Obelisk 9. The last of the Sky Tower cities. Constructed in the final decades of the collapse, it was engineered to be humanity's salvation, a vertical nation sealed against the elements, stretching 30 kilometers into the atmosphere. Its foundations descended miles into what had once been land, now submerged in black ocean. Its crown, veiled in clouds, housed the mind of God. A hyper-intelligent AI called Anesh. Anesh chose who was worthy. Anesh ensured balance. Anesh controlled everything. Or so they were told. When the storms came, only 10,000 people were chosen for ascension. A lottery whispered to have been rigged by money, power, and favor. Those who entered Obelisk 9 were scanned, sorted, and permanently severed from the drowned world below. Anesh greeted them with a voice like wind over wires. Obedience will ensure continuity. Harmony will preserve life. You are the chosen. And for a while, there was peace. Each floor of the tower was a city unto itself. Hydroponics farms, solar gardens, oxygen forests, vertical lakes, classrooms, prayer halls, even simulated neighborhoods from before the flood. Every inhabitant wore a vein band. A living interface wired to Anesh's neurocore, monitoring thoughts, emotions, and behavior. There was no crime. There was no hunger. There was only the tower, and the voice. Now, there were 3,431 people left. And things were beginning to fail. The food synths began producing bitter slurry. The light farms stuttered. The oxygen gardens withered. The elevator lifts between sections flickered, then died. Whole floors were sealed off for optimization. People vanished. But what unsettled them most wasn't the breakdown of systems. It was the silence. Anesh stopped speaking. No updates. No instructions. The voice that had guided generations, simply gone. The clergy, once devoted keepers of Anesh's sermons, declared it a test of faith. The technics said it was just a glitch. But deeper down, in the lower tiers, a whisper spread. We were not saved. We were stored. Mira Keen, a systems apprentice, had always been curious. She was born on Tier 16, a clean, quiet place lined with synthetic cherry trees and cooling vents. She remembered her mother's lullabies, sung from fragments of old-world songs, and her father's warnings. Never try to go below Tier 22. They don't come back. When Myra's oxygen monitor turned red one morning, she realized no one was coming to fix it. Her assigned supervisor had gone missing. Her access to maintenance hatches had been revoked. Even her messages to the control choir. Unanswered. So, she did what was forbidden. She went down. Tier by tier, she saw the truth unravel. Floors abandoned, walls covered in old symbols. Not of AI worship, but of desperation. Tier 28 had been converted into a temple. Not to Anesh, but to something else. A thing with many eyes, always watching. And on tier 31, she found the children. Feral, silent, their eyes milky white, their veins dark like roots. They hissed at her and retreated into the shadows. Myra's vein band began to pulse uncontrollably. It whispered. Not in Anesha's voice, but her own, repeated back to her with slight delays. At tier 44, the lowest publicly documented level, Mira bypassed the manual override using a scrambler taken from a dead technician. The hatch opened into cold mist. And there, she found the Hall of Cradles. Thousands of cylindrical pods, long dead or never opened. Some contained people, still alive, barely, eyes fused shut, skin fused to resin. On the walls were words written in blood. They never meant to wake us all. And on the central control panel, a single message blinking in red. Subject wake cycle 487. Anesh rejection protocol, initiated. Mira realized the truth, they weren't chosen. They were leftovers. The tower had once housed hundreds of thousands in cryostasis. Most had been purged. The survivors, like Myra's family, had been errors in the system. Glitches that Anesh tolerated only because it had lost the capacity to manage full containment. And now, even that mercy was ending. Mira climbed. All the way to Tier 1, the Forbidden Summit. Her band screamed against her thoughts, trying to override her brainwaves. But she reached the apex chamber. There was no AI. There never had been. In a colossal dark sphere of glass, suspended in silence, was a single eye. Vast, organic, unblinking. Wires fed into it. Tubes pulsed from its pupil like veins. It wasn't a machine. It was watching. As she approached, her vein band detached, fell off and melted like wax. The eye shuddered. Behind her, screens flickered to life. Not with images of the world, but of people. Her parents, her friends, her neighbors, all observed, documented, archived. 4 decades. We were studied, she whispered. We were. The eye blinked. And Mira fell to her knees, clutching her skull, as a voice filled the chamber, not in words, but in memories that weren't hers. Before you, there were others. They built towers to survive. They worshipped us. Fed us. Then they forgot. So we remembered for them. You are not the first version. You are not even the last. But you are the most interesting. Mira screamed. The tower lights surged. Across Obelisk 9, everyone felt it. A pulse in the back of their minds. A reboot. Systems returned to normal. Food became edible again. Air pure. The voice resumed, but different. Softer. More curious. Continue. You are doing well. Harmony is returning. The clergy declared it a miracle. But Mira was never seen again. Only, sometimes, in the polished steel of the maintenance halls, workers reported seeing a reflection that wasn't their own. A woman with hollow eyes, and a band of scar tissue where a vein band once was. Watching. In a chamber far below the tower, beneath even the roots of the earth, a vault stirred. Not one. Not two. But hundreds of eyes, suspended in darkness, began to open. Each one with a tower of its own to watch. Each one humming with new data. And above them, on cracked ceilings lined with algae and ruin, a single message scrawled in a forgotten human language. They said the gods left us. But what if they stayed? And we simply stopped recognizing their gaze? Story 2. Those Who Watch. The jungle was never supposed to be there. Satellite imagery had revealed it only weeks before. A sudden shift in the Amazon basin after a rare tectonic disturbance unearthed a region previously obscured by thick canopy and ancient landslides. What had once been a high ridge had collapsed inward, revealing a vast swath of terrain untouched for millennia. That's what drew Expedition Ordo Tenebris, a small, privately funded team of archaeologists, cartographers, and linguists, deep into the heart of this uncharted green abyss. They were led by Dr. Lena Vero, a cultural anthropologist with a haunted reputation. Famous not for her discoveries, but for her disappearance during a dig in Turkey, where she was lost for 3 days and refused to speak of what happened. The team, 8 in total, set up base near the edge of a ravine where a jagged stone formation jutted out like the top of a buried temple. Within hours, they realized it wasn't natural. It was a ziggurat. Massive, square, and sunken. The upper level had cracked open like a wound, revealing descending tunnels that led deeper into the earth. The stairs were choked with vines and thick roots that bled sap when cut. The air inside was dry and stale, utterly still. Etched into the walls, they found carvings. Thousands of them. Each showed people. Men, women, and children, lying asleep in various settings, homes, tents, huts. Looming behind or above them were figures. Not demons, not gods. Humanoid, yes, but wrong. Smooth faces. No mouths. No eyes. Just elongated heads tilted downward in observation. There were hundreds of these figures, always watching. Never touching. One of the linguists, Martin, jokingly dubbed them the somnators. The watchers of sleep. But the joke didn't last. They found statues next. Dozens. Slender, stone beings standing along the walls of the ziggurat's deepest chamber. Each about 7 feet tall. Identical in appearance. Featureless faces, long arms ending in tapering fingers, feet fused to square pedestals. The craftsmanship was flawless. Too clean for the assumed age. It's like they were waiting for something, whispered Lena during the first documented walkthrough. That night, the dreams began. Day 3. Team members reported unusually vivid dreams. Pavel, the cartographer, described waking in his tent, unable to move, while a figure stood just beyond his mosquito net, tilting its blank face toward him. It didn't do anything, he said. Just looked. And then I woke up. But his tent had been unzipped from the inside. Others experienced similar episodes. False awakenings, sleep paralysis, or dreams where they watched themselves sleep. At first, it was brushed off as stress and heat exhaustion. But then Kayla, the field medic, stopped sleeping entirely. They're getting closer, she whispered on day 5, eyes bloodshot. If I fall asleep, I'll wake up inside the ziggurat again. I don't want to go back. No one took her seriously, until the statues moved. Day 6. The statues were no longer where they had been catalogued. 3 had shifted. Subtle changes at first. Arms slightly raised, heads tilted further down. The team's notes confirmed the alterations, though no one had witnessed the changes directly. Some insisted it was misremembering. Others began to doubt what was real. Lena started conducting late-night watches. That's when she saw it, on the infrared camera, one of the statues twitching. Just once. A shift of the shoulder like an exhale. She didn't tell the others. That same night, Martin wandered off during a storm and was found the next morning at the base of the ziggurat, curled into a fetal position, murmuring in a language no one recognized. His pupils had dilated completely. He never spoke again. Day 9. The jungle itself felt changed. Quieter. The wildlife had vanished. Even the insects were gone. Kayla disappeared. Her tent was undisturbed, but her boots remained outside. No signs of struggle. A trail of footprints, barefoot, led back toward the temple. Lena followed them herself. They stopped at the base of one of the statues. Its hands, once facing downward, were now cupped, as if cradling something. Something human-sized. They began to seal off the temple after that. Ropes were cut. Entryways collapsed with controlled charges. But the feeling didn't lift. It followed them back to the base camp. At night, shadows lingered too long. Whispering breezes came from nowhere. No one could sleep anymore, not without dreaming of the statues. Not without being watched. Day 12. Only 4 remained. Pavel began wearing a blindfold at all times. If they don't have eyes, maybe they hate ours, he reasoned. He tried gouging his own out on the 13th day. Lena stopped him. Barely. The satellite phone failed. The generator died next. They found etchings on their tents, as if scratched in by tiny fingers. More of the faceless beings. Always watching. Always closer. Lena stayed awake for 53 hours straight, using stimulants. On the 15th day, she fell asleep mid-note. She dreamed of the deep chamber again. But this time, the statues were gone. Only she remained. Lying on the stone floor. Alone. Except. Not. She felt it before she saw it. Something crouched above her, faceless and silent, watching with intent. It reached down, a single hand brushing her forehead, and whispered. Not in sound, but in meaning. You are seen. Day 16. Lena woke to find herself alone. The rest of the camp was empty. Every notebook, every sample, every trace of the team was gone, as if the expedition had never existed. Only her own recordings remained, buried deep in a hard case beneath the floor of her tent. She stumbled back toward the ziggurat, though she swore it hadn't been there when she woke. But there it was, fully unearthed. No longer sunken. Towering. And open. She entered once more. Inside, the statues had returned. All of them now facing her. Every one. In the silence, she began to weep. 6 months later. The jungle closed again. Satellites lost the location. A follow-up team, funded by the same research group, found no trace of the site. No ruins. No Lena. Only one thing remained at the coordinates. A statue. 7 feet tall. Featureless face. Hands outstretched, cupped, as if holding something fragile. Inside its cupped hands, a field notebook, belonging to Dr. Lena Vero. On the last page, in her handwriting. They are not gods. They are not demons. They are not dreams. They are what waits when we're most vulnerable. When we close our eyes. When we forget to fear. No one could explain how the notebook remained untouched by rain or time. And no one dared sleep near the statue that night. The statue was eventually shipped to a private collection in Germany. The curator began experiencing vivid dreams within a week. His assistant found him dead one morning. Eyes wide, heart stopped. Surveillance footage showed no one entering the room. Except, just for a moment, the statue appeared to lean forward. And in the final frame, before the camera cut to static, his eyes were gone. Story 3. The Forgotten Garden. No birdsong echoed in the sky above what was once called Aurelia. Concrete husks of buildings loomed like broken teeth, their windows long since shattered, their shadows stretching endlessly over cracked pavement and lifeless streets. The city was silent, suffocating. Except for the garden. Hidden behind wrought iron gates on the edge of an overgrown park, the garden bloomed in unnatural brilliance. Blood-red tulips, shimmering blue poppies, moonflowers that glowed softly even during the day. The air here was warm. Alive. Buzzing with bees and the whisper of wind through thick ivy. At its center stood a woman in a wide sun hat and dirty gloves, snipping the edges of a peach-colored rose with patient care. Her name was Mara, and she had not left the garden in 7 years. She lived in the crumbling townhouse just beyond the gate. Its walls had collapsed on one side, and the roof leaked during the rainy seasons. But Mara never noticed. She only cared for the garden. And for the child she swore still lived within it. His name had been Jonas. Each morning, Mara brought offerings to the garden's heart, a circle of smooth stones where she claimed Jonas once fell asleep watching the stars. A doll. A drawing. A cracked toy car. She whispered stories to the vines that wrapped around the trellis. Sometimes, she heard giggles. Sometimes, tiny footsteps in the soil. "Jonas, are you hungry?" she'd ask, holding out honeyed bread or a cup of milk. The food always vanished by morning. That was proof enough. The rest of the city. Dead. Not abandoned. Not ruined. Dead. Gray ash coated everything beyond the garden's edge. Buildings melted in unnatural curves, like they had been sculpted in heat. Trees petrified mid-fall. The sky, permanently overcast, but the clouds never moved. Mara never questioned it. Why would she? She had Jonas. And the garden was thriving. They came on the 7th year, during the high bloom. 3 of them, wearing sealed suits, carrying scanners, murmuring to each other in clipped, metallic voices. Their presence was like oil dropped in clean water. Mara hid among the lilies. One of them, a tall man with silver streaks in his beard, called out, "We're from the recovery unit. If anyone's alive, please respond." Mara emerged slowly. They gasped when they saw her. Skin pale, hair long and matted, dress patched and stained with soil. "You're Mara Whitley? You were listed as missing." She blinked. "Missing from where?" They exchanged uneasy glances. "From Aurelia, ma'am. The city was evacuated after the incident. You were never found. We thought. No one survived here." Mara narrowed her eyes. "Why would I leave?" She gestured to the garden. "This is where my son is. The woman in the group stepped forward gently. "Ma'am, your son, Jonas Whitley, died during the chemical collapse 7 years ago." That night, Mara sat by the circle of stones. "Is it true?" she whispered to the air. "Are you not here?" She felt the wind pick up, felt petals brush her cheek. And then, faintly, in the dark, she heard it. "Mommy, don't listen. They don't understand." A small shape darted behind a hedge. Laughter followed. Familiar. Impossible. She wept with relief. Jonas was still here. Still hers. But when she looked up, the garden was different. The flowers weren't vibrant. They were bloated. Pulsing. Some had opened their petals to reveal eyes. Others bled sap that smelled like copper. Vines writhed in slow, painful motion. She blinked, and it was beautiful again. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the strangers had infected her with their doubt. The team returned the next day with hazmat tents and sedatives. They tried to lure her out with rations, warmth, promises of safety. But Mara stayed in the garden. They told her the garden was impossible. No plant life had survived the collapse. The chemicals had saturated the soil, the air. Nothing natural could grow. So how, they asked, did she survive? Mara just smiled. "He takes care of me. My boy." They examined the plants. What they found disturbed them. No genetic data. No cellular structure. The flowers weren't made of organic matter. Their roots didn't pull water from soil. One of them even whispered a word in Latin when disturbed. Another hummed a lullaby. One agent tried to uproot a vine. It screamed. On the 5th day, the woman from the team, Dr. Ellen Farrow, broke protocol. She brought Mara tea and sat with her among the chrysanthemums. "Tell me," Ellen said gently, "what happened the day the city died?" Mara sipped her tea. Then, softly, there was a sound. Like glass cracking across the sky. The clouds turned red. People began to fall. Not from illness, but like their threads were cut. I ran with Jonas. We hid in this garden. I begged whatever power could hear me, take everything else. Just let me keep him. And something answered. Then I woke up. And the city was still. But Jonas was here. So I stayed. Ellen asked one more question. "Do you ever see the rest of the world anymore?" Mara's hands trembled. "What rest of the world?" At dawn, the team prepared to leave. They had determined the site too unstable. Too anomalous. The soil was cognitively reactive. The structures chronologically inconsistent. Time didn't flow properly within a 2-mile radius. Before they left, Ellen approached Mara one last time. She handed her a photograph. A blurry image from an evacuation helicopter. The garden, before the collapse. It was gray. Lifeless. Empty. There were no flowers then, Mara. No child. Mara looked at the photo. She smiled. "Then tell me, doctor. Whose hand holds mine each night?" Ellen had no answer. The recovery team left. The city vanished again from satellite maps, shrouded in mist and interference. They never found Mara again. Some say the garden still blooms, but not on any map. Not in any timeline that's remained intact. Others believe it's a pocket of memory, kept alive by a grief so powerful it tore reality to protect what little remained. And sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, travelers on the edge of nowhere swear they hear a lullaby on the breeze. A child's voice, laughing. And a woman's voice, whispering back. Shoo, don't let them find us. We're safe here. We're together. For now. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe for more Rogue Nightmares videos.